Welcome to the deep dive. This week, we're really getting into a story that just devastated Central Texas recently. We're talking about those terrible floods. Over 100 lives lost, places like Camp Mystic just gone underwater. But almost right away, another kind of storm started brewing. Online activists, people asking, was this really just nature? Was something called cloud seeding involved? So we took all the sources you sent, articles, clips, official statements, and we're going to try and unpack this. What is cloud seeding really? What's its history? It's actually pretty surprising. How's it used now? And yeah, why did it become such a huge point of debate after what happened in Texas?
Right. And our goal here really is to cut through some of that noise. We want to separate the facts from, well, the speculation. Look at the actual science, the history of manipulating weather, see how it connects to the bigger picture, like climate change. And ultimately, just get you thinking about the implications. As humans get better, maybe at influencing the weather, what does that mean?
The damage from those floods, it was just awful. Yeah, there's torrential rains Friday evening, flash floods, over 100 people killed, hundreds missing. And Camp Mystic, near Hunt, Texas, that historic girls' camp, completely overwhelmed by the Guadalupe River. The pictures, Highway 39 just vanished in places, school buses, livestock, homes, swept away. But yeah, amid all that tragedy, this controversy blew up fast. Social media, local activists, they started pointing to radar images, flight logs, suggesting aircraft were up there over the hill country just hours before the rain hit hard. And we saw experts weighing in, like Dr. Lila Marquez, former NOAA climatologist. She said, and I'm quoting from the sources, everything about this event was abnormal, pointing out how fast the storm developed. The moisture levels didn't fit the usual July pattern. And her worry was pretty stark, wasn't it? If cloud seeding did happen, she said, we may be looking at a case of science crossing ethical boundaries.
Yeah, and the official lines were, very guarded. The Texas Department of Emergency Management, TDM, they didn't confirm anything, didn't deny anything, just said, all variables are being examined, which could mean anything, really. And the U.S. Air Weather Service declined to comment. Just silence.
That human angle really fueled the demands for answers, too. There was this quote from Grace Stevedow, a Camp Mystic parent. She said her daughter was supposed to come home Saturday, but they couldn't even find her cabin. And then she added, if someone caused this storm on purpose, that's not climate science. That's man playing God. It's hard, doesn't it?
It really does. And that kind of public pressure, it reached the top. Texas Governor Joanna Reyes, she ordered an independent investigation looking into all weather-related activities in that area, specifically in the 72 hours before the storm. Her statement was quite strong. We cannot let modern technology outpace our moral responsibility. And if these lives were lost due to reckless experimentation, there will be accountability. So clearly the stakes here are incredibly high, way beyond just meteorology.
Okay, so let's get into the core of it then. This term cloud seeding. What exactly is it? How does it even work, theoretically?
Right. So the basic idea behind cloud seeding is to encourage clouds that already exist to release their moisture as rain or snow. Think about it like this. Inside a cloud, you have water vapor, tiny little droplets. But for them to become heavy enough to fall, they need something to kind of latch onto. A nucleus? Normally that's tiny particles already in the air, like dust, pollen, maybe pollution. Cloud seeding just gives them more of these nuclei. Planes fly up, often into the tops of clouds, and they release tiny particles, commonly silver iodide, sometimes salts. The water vapor condenses around these particles, the droplets grow, get heavy, and hopefully fall. It's like giving nature a bit of a helping hand, you could say.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's where it gets really sticky with the Texas situation because, according to the sources, the CEO of a weather modification company did confirm their planes were up there, releasing silver iodide 2 days before the floods hit. I mean, to the average person, that sounds pretty damning, right?
It absolutely sounds like a direct link, which is why this became such a big story. But it's crucial to hear the rest of what the CEO and other scientists pointed out. It's all about scale and timing. He immediately followed up by saying cloud seeding produces sub-centimeter amounts of precipitation, tiny amounts. Now, over a large area, that can add up to hundreds of acre-feet of water, which is significant for, say, farmers or reservoirs. It's not nothing. But, he stressed, it cannot come close to causing flooding on the scale seen in Texas. And Chase Kane, the NBC News climate reporter, really broke down why the science doesn't support seeding causing these floods. First, effectiveness. He said it makes really small amounts of rain. Scientists have argued for decades about how effective it even is. But even when it works best, it's not deluge-level rain, certainly not the amount of rain that they saw in Texas. Second, and this is maybe the biggest point, the timing. Cloud seeding is fast-acting. The effect happens within like 15 minutes to an hour. The Texas operation was 2 days before the flooding. That's just too long a gap for a direct cause, scientifically. And third, the location wasn't even quite right. The seeding targeted a pretty small area, and it wasn't directly over where the absolute worst of the flooding occurred.
Okay, so you have this scientific explanation, wrong timing, wrong scale, maybe even the slightly wrong place. But then why the immediate suspicion? Why did even someone like Dr. Marquez, the former NOAA climatologist, voice concerns about it being potentially involved? What causes that disconnect between what the seeding tech can apparently do and the immediate assumption it caused this?
That's a really important question. I think part of it is just a lack of widespread understanding of what weather modification actually entails. It sounds powerful, right? Cloud seeding. It sounds like we can just flip a switch and make it pour. But the reality, as the science suggests, is much more subtle. It's about efficiency, not creation. It's trying to get a bit more rain out of a cloud that's already there. It's definitely not about creating massive, record-breaking storm systems out of thin air. And when tragedy happens, a catastrophe like those floods, people understandably look for explanations, sometimes, any explanation. And a technology that sounds like weather control, that becomes an easy, if scientifically unlikely, target. The emotion kind of overrides the nuance.
That makes sense. Fear and the need for answers in a disaster. So if it's not for making biblical floods, what is cloud seeding generally used for? You mentioned its history goes way back, like mid-20th century.
Oh, yeah, quite a ways back. The key moment usually cited is 1946. A chemist at General Electric, Vincent Schaefer, he was experimenting, flew over a cloud in the Adirondacks in New York, and he dropped about 6 pounds of crushed dry ice into it. Simple as that. And almost right away, snow started falling from the base of that cloud. First real artificial snow from a cloud.
Wow. Just dry ice, not some super complex chemical. That's amazing. And then later, he and others figured out silver iodide was really effective, too, for ice crystals, and that's still used.
It's exactly. Yeah. Silver iodide became one of the go-to substances. And today, the main application, the most common one, is really fighting drought, trying to enhance rainfall in dry areas. Look at the United Arab Emirates. They're in a very water-scarce region. Back in 1990, anticipating growing water needs and UN warnings, they launched a major research program for rain enhancement. Their stated goal is to boost the rain they get from clouds by 15 to 30%, which is quite a bit if you're desperate for water. And they're serious about it. In 2022 alone, they flew over 300 cloud seeding missions. 311, I think the source said.
So yeah, this isn't just some fringe experiment. For some countries, it's a core part of their water strategy. It's infrastructure, basically. But okay, inevitably, that raises questions about the environment. Releasing silver iodide into the atmosphere. Are there concerns about that? For ecosystems, for health, especially if it's done a lot.
That's definitely a conversation that happens, and a valid one. The potential impact of silver iodide, especially in large amounts over long periods, is studied. Although many assessments suggest the concentrations are generally very low, below harmful levels. But research is ongoing, and it's why alternatives are being looked at and used. Meteorologist Edward Graham, he points out that the UAE, for instance, mostly uses salt flares, basically common salt, and he argues that causes no actual harm to the environment. As for the planes themselves, the carbon footprint, well, they're usually small aircraft, compared to global aviation or cars. Graham calls it just a drop in the ocean. Doesn't mean it's zero, but the perspective is important.
Okay, so maybe the direct environmental harm from the seeding agents themselves isn't the biggest worry, especially with alternatives like salt. But what about messing with the system? Unintended consequences down the line, or maybe downwind? The sources brought this up, the risk of disrupting natural rain patterns. Like, if you make it rain here, does that mean less rain somewhere else that might need it? Could you accidentally worsen droughts elsewhere or cause floods in unexpected places?
That is a much more complex and frankly more concerning question in the long run. The idea of atmospheric water stealing, even unintentionally, altering precipitation in one area could absolutely have knock-on effects. Ecosystems are interconnected, weather systems cross borders, and that takes us into the more, let's say, provocative uses of this technology. Beyond just drought relief, the strategic potential, using weather as a tool, or even a weapon, that used to be pure science fiction. Not so much anymore.
Right. And there's that historical example, Project Popeye. That sounds like something out of a movie. The U.S. military working with GE during the Vietnam War, trying to make it rain more over the Ho Chi Minh Trail to basically flood enemy supply lines. And it was all secret.
Completely secret at the time, yeah. Ran from 67 to 72. The goal was exactly that.
Yeah.
Extend the monsoon season, make the trail impassable, increase rainfall. Whether it was truly effective, how much impact it actually had, that's still debated. But the intent was clear. Weather is a tactical weapon. And fast forward to today, China. The sources say they've taken weather modification to a whole new level. New heights was the phrase used. They're apparently way ahead of other nations in scale and ambition. They already manipulate weather over cities for things like reducing pollution or ensuring good weather for events. But their goal by 2025 is to have the capability to modify weather over half the entire country, half of China. That's enormous. And you can bet their neighbors, especially India, are watching this very closely with a lot of concern.
And there are direct military implications there too, right? It's not just about agriculture or clear skies for parades. Sources mention military involvement, developing specific aircraft, even using anti-aircraft guns adapted for seeding. The idea being you could create rainy or muddy conditions over a border area to slow down enemy troop movements or mess with their logistics. It adds this whole other dimension to, well, power projection.
Absolutely. And it ties back to that earlier concern about unintended consequences, but now with potential intent. If China's large-scale operations significantly alter rainfall patterns, could that impact agriculture in India, in Myanmar, Vietnam? This whole concept of rain stealing, whether deliberate or accidental, becomes a real geopolitical issue. It could seriously strain regional relations. It just underscores how complex this gets and why you'd need, ideally, international agreement, some kind of framework for using these technologies responsibly.
Okay, this is huge. So we have the basic science, the drought relief, the environmental questions, and now these big geopolitical, even military dimensions. Let's circle back to Texas for a moment and clarify something really important that often gets mixed up in these discussions. Cloud seeding versus climate change. The sources were adamant. These are totally different things. Apples and oranges.
Yeah, exactly. It's a critical distinction. Cloud seeding, as we've discussed, is weather modification. It's hyper-local. It's in the moment. It's trying to influence a specific weather system right now. Climate change, that's the long game. It's happening over a long period of time, decades, centuries. And the basic physics connecting climate change to heavier rainfall. It's actually pretty straightforward and not new. Scientists figured this out back in the 1820s, roughly 200 years ago. We burn fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas. That traps heat. The atmosphere gets hotter, the oceans get hotter. And a fundamental rule of physics is a hotter atmosphere can hold more moisture, more water vapor. So there's more fuel for storms. But that extra moisture doesn't come down evenly. It comes down in more intense bursts, hence heavier rainfall events.
And we saw that quantified for the Texas storm, didn't we? That rapid attribution report from European scientists. They calculated the storm was up to 7% wetter, dumped up to 7% more rain, specifically because of climate change warming the atmosphere. And, 7% might not sound like a lot, but as the source pointed out, when you're talking about river levels going from, say, 1 foot to 34 feet. That 7% is a massive amount of extra water. So it really paints a picture, doesn't it? You have the immediate localized debate about cloud seeding, which the science suggests wasn't the cause of the flooding itself. But then you have this larger background force, climate change, making the whole event significantly worse than it might have been otherwise. Yet the public perception, fueled by viral videos, maybe commentary like Joe Rogan's on the Dubai floods you mentioned, people immediately jump to, oh, they're making it rain, they seeded the clouds. It becomes the sole explanation, which, as you said, is nuts.
Precisely. It highlights that gap in understanding between a specific, limited technology and these huge, complex climate forces. But while we're dissecting the science and the debates, it's absolutely vital we don't lose sight of the human tragedy unfolding on the ground in Texas. The recovery effort, it's immense and heartbreaking. The latest updates from officials from those press conferences, 87 people confirmed deceased recovered just in Kerr County. And tragically, that included 56 adults and 30 children. And as of that update, they were still searching for 5 campers from Camp Mystic and 1 counselor. Still missing. The search and rescue operation is just massive. Hundreds of people from local, state, federal agencies, plus volunteers, all working along the Guadalupe River.
Yeah, the list of resources involved was staggering. Helicopters with hoist teams, drone teams, K9 units, swift water boats, airboats, UTVs, four-wheel drives, just an incredible mobilization.
And the work itself. Officials described it as extremely treacherous, time-consuming, dirty work. They're dealing with huge debris piles, having to sift through them literally layer by layer. And they also emphasized the focus on the well-being of the first responders themselves. Dealing with that kind of tragedy, especially involving children, the emotional toll is unimaginable.
And amidst that incredibly difficult work, there were still those pressing questions about the timeline. Reporters asking, what happened with the emergency alerts? Specifically between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., before the first flood alert went out. When did the river actually start rising rapidly?
Yeah, the Kerr County Sheriff addressed that. He mentioned he personally was notified by 911 calls starting around 4 or 5 a.m. But he stressed, quite understandably I think, that his absolute priority right then was the search. locating people, identification, notifying families. Establishing a precise minute-by-minute timeline wasn't the focus in the heat of the crisis. He also sort of alluded to the complexities of issuing warnings, coordinating multiple agencies. It's not just flipping a switch.
Absolutely. And the community's response, asking for help, it was very clear. Financial donations directed to the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country. That's where they needed support. And also that plea for people not to travel to the area, just to look, to stay away, let the responders do their critical work without interference.
So as we wrap this up, it feels like we're at this intersection, don't you think? The raw power of nature, these devastating disasters, meeting the very edge of human technology and our attempts to control or influence it. We've looked at cloud seeding, how it works, that it's mostly small scale, its history, its use in places like the UAE for drought. And then the darker side, the potential military uses, the geopolitical stuff with China.
Exactly. And the Texas tragedy, even if cloud seeding wasn't the direct cause of the flooding, it absolutely became a flashpoint. It forced these bigger questions onto the table, didn't it? Questions like, how much control should we have over the weather? Is there a line? Or, as one source put it, in the pursuit of innovation, has humanity finally crossed a line it can't return from? It's pretty profound stuff. It really is. As we get better at understanding nature, maybe even manipulating it, how do we handle that power? Balancing the potential benefits of science, like helping with drought, with the huge moral responsibility that comes with it. What does this changing relationship with the weather actually mean for all of us, for our future on this planet? It makes you think.